Today, I want to talk about recovery, specifically my own. I've talked about the worst parts of my disorder, and I've talked about how it affects my daily life, but I haven't really talked about the in-between, aka a deep dive on how I got better. So this video is just that. How I became the stable person I am today. And if you are new here, welcome. My name is Kit and I'm diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, which is a condition where someone experiences symptoms of schizophrenia, such as delusions and hallucinations, but also symptoms of a mood disorder, either major depression or in my case, bipolar. My schizoaffective disorder has screwed up my life, but I fought back and tamed the beast. And this is how I did it. It all started at the tail end of my psychotic break all the way back in 2018. I won't go into details as I've made several videos about that time, which I will link at the end of this one. But just know I was deeply delusional, constantly hallucinating, and suffering from the worst bipolar-esque episode of my entire life. And towards the end of this, what would be known as the acute period, things started calming down to more of something akin to a residual phase. I was still dealing with delusions, but they weren't as strong. And my hallucinations and moods had become a little bit more normal. Or what was normal for me, I should say. And something was off. I started thinking that maybe none of it was real. I started wondering if what I had dealt with as a result of my psychosis was all in my head or not. I thought it being real was as terrible as it not being real. So I went down the not real route because I felt I had nothing to lose. I remember researching psychosis and starting to figure out that maybe it applied to me. And so I got on call with my psychiatrist, told him absolutely everything, and he diagnosed me with textbook bipolar 1 with psychotic features, which really wasn't too far off. It wasn't until late 2020 that I clarified with him that back when I heard voices, I heard them all the time, not just in episodes, and that would later land me the proper diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, but that's kind of beside the point. The point was that in 2018, I got on an antipsychotic and that changed everything. The voices I heard all the time went down to a minimum, and my delusions mostly disappeared entirely. And my manic symptoms went away and my moods stabilized. Zyprexa, the antipsychotic that I was put on back then and still take to this day, was basically sorcery. And now my real recovery could begin. Because that's the thing, meds are often only the beginning of someone's recovery. They alone cannot make you recover, but they are there to help you recover. Because the thing is, even though I was on medication that was really helping me, my emotions were still way out of control. My emotions were not regulated. I continued to ruminate on all sorts of things, and I didn't know how to handle my feelings. And my anxiety was at an all-time high, and I was struggling with symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder, a condition that was, unfortunately for me, made worse by the Zyprexa. And I didn't even know I had OCD, even though there were signs and symptoms for years and years and years. My biggest OCD thought was that I would have a really bad allergic reaction to something I ate, and as a result, it would not end well for me. As a result of this, I was terrified of most food. And this OCD played a major role in how difficult it was for me to recover. Because I was not only battling a psychotic disorder all those years, I was also battling undiagnosed OCD as well. So as much as meds helped, I needed more than what they could provide. I decided to check myself into a psych ward voluntarily for a week. It was an eye-opening experience, and honestly, it gave me a place to think for the most part. And there is something to be said for that. At this whole time, I was struggling with some pretty self-destructive behaviors that made a safe place seem a little bit more ideal for what I was going through. The safety aspect was a really big thing at this time in my life. They also had someone watch me 24/7 for the first few days I was there, even when I was going to the bathroom and sleeping, so yeah, that was fun. But anyways, I remember at one point talking with one of the therapists and begging for help because I didn't know what to do, and she told me 3 words, and those 3 words would later go on to change my life. She told me I needed dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT. I have talked fondly of DBT over the years and even recently on this channel, and this little conversation that I had with this therapist would actually be the start of me finally getting better. Because boy oh boy did I need a life raft to hang on to in the middle of the ocean. So I was discharged from the psych ward, woot woot woot, and went to my psychiatrist to ask him about those 3 little words. He told me to my delight that there was a program at the practice I went to. I was so thrilled that I didn't have to go far to get it. I could do it in my hometown. And I was warned by him that DBT was, and I quote, a life-changing program. He said this almost like a warning. And at this point, I didn't care. I needed to change because my life was miserable. I couldn't keep going like this. I wasn't happy, I wasn't content, and honestly, I was having a really, really hard time. So whatever DBT would do for me, however I would end up, it had to be better than what I was going through. I would later learn that my former psychiatrist was right. DBT was life-changing. Because DBT helps you with almost every aspect of your whole life. It teaches mindfulness, which helps you live in the moment, make the most of that moment, and be present for the moment. Mindfulness helps you understand what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. And it inspires self-awareness, which I value. DBT also teaches interpersonal skills, which are how to build healthy relationships with others, but also maintain your self-respect. It teaches what validation is and why it's important. And literally teaches you how to make and maintain friendships, which I find so hilarious, but also super useful. In addition to those two things, distress tolerance is another big thing in DBT. Distress tolerance is about many things, including crisis survival skills. It teaches you how to handle and survive intense emotional situations while not engaging in bad behaviors. This module is the one I found the most helpful early on, and it's pretty obvious to see why it would be helpful for someone like me. Finally, there's emotion regulation, which is pretty self-explanatory. It helps you to regulate your emotions and handle those emotions. Super useful for people's emotions who are all over the place. DBT was originally designed for those with borderline personality disorder by the absolute queen herself, Marsha Linehan. But a lot of the research that would eventually become DBT was done on high-risk groups by Linehan right after she got tenure at the university she worked at. She's iconic, and she actually wrote an autobiography, which I highly recommend for anyone to read, even if you're not going through DBT yourself. It's just a pretty fascinating story of how she developed this life-changing, life-saving program. Since its inception, DBT has spread far beyond those with borderline personality disorder, which is how I was able to end up in the program in the first place. And in my opinion, I feel that DBT should be taught in schools because I truly believe that everyone, even those without a severe mental illness, could benefit from certain aspects of the program. And now I hope you can see why DBT saved me and helped me build a life worth living. Now I want to talk about my OCD recovery a little bit more. OCD was the thing I still struggled with. I was still actively in DBT classes when this was happening. But DBT wasn't really designed to treat OCD, even if some of the distress tolerant skills were super effective at dealing with the anxiety that OCD causes. To treat the OCD, once we figured out that that's what I had, I was placed with a therapist that specialized in something called ERP. And ERP stands for Exposure and Response Prevention, which is the gold standard for the treatment of obsessive compulsive disorder. In my case, when it comes to my particular brand of OCD, I have an intrusive thought that is usually quite awful. And then I have compulsions, aka little things I do that make the thought a little bit better. But it's a lie, because no matter what, the thought always comes back. So I'm left doing the compulsions over and over and over again, trying to fix the thought. And it never, ever works ever, and it's miserable and awful. Exposure therapy is doing the things I hate, no compulsions allowed. And over the course of a session, I just sit with the bad thoughts. And I will not lie to you, my anxiety skyrockets in these situations. But that is by design. Believe it or not, the anxiety that's caused by letting the intrusive thought run wild in my brain, no compulsions allowed, actually does calm down eventually, which is absolutely fascinating to me because the brain just gets used to the thought and learns that it's just an intrusive thought, not something I actually truly believe, and then suddenly I'm able to handle it. And then I don't have to deal with it taking over my life and causing me all these issues because it's just fine. And that's the magic of exposure therapy, because even if the intrusive thought is there, it's manageable. So in ERP, you go and do this process over and over and over again because it doesn't always work the first time. Sometimes it takes another session or a bunch of sessions. I've had several sessions on several different things. My original thought of thinking I was going to have an allergic reaction to the food I ate that was multiple sessions over multiple weeks. It took a long time for me to actually get better from that one. But eventually, with the help of this, I was able to recover from my OCD and I got better. I eventually did get on a supplement to treat my OCD, and it really was a game changer for me. And I know you might be thinking, Kit, come on, why were you not on a treatment for OCD sooner? And to that, I tell you that a lot of treatments for OCD, a lot of medications used to treat OCD, they're antidepressants. And antidepressants in me run the risk of causing mania because I have the bipolar type of schizoaffective disorder. And so people with that disorder, my disorder, or bipolar disorder just on its own, can't usually take antidepressants because of the risk for mania. And mania really messes up your life, and it can destroy entire aspects of your life, if not your whole life. I mean, my manic episode, the one manic episode I have, destroyed my whole life, and I don't really want to risk that again. So I was actually put on this supplement, which is N-acetylcysteine. I was put on this supplement to help prevent long-term damage from lithium use, because as many people know, lithium can cause long-term effects on the kidneys, which I'm reminded constantly in the comments of my videos, on any videos where I talk about lithium. But using this supplement to help prevent those long-term complications, I went on it for that, and I was recovering from my OCD at the time, and I noticed that my OCD symptoms, my intrusive thoughts, the ERP was a little bit easier when I went on it, and I was like, oh, interesting. And so I went and did some Googling, did some research, and I found out that N-acetylcysteine is used to treat treatment-resistant OCD. And so it absolutely changed my life. I'm not going to tell you what dosage I'm on because I don't encourage people to start taking things because of a YouTuber. So if you're interested in taking N-acetylcysteine, talk to your doctor about it. They can do the research. They can tell you what dose to be on. They know better than me saying what works for me. If that makes sense. Like, I'm not a doctor or other medical healthcare professional, mental health professional. I'm not that. So please do not, talk to your doctor first. That's what I'll say. But with the addition of the NAC, I was truly able to finally recover from my OCD. And while I was doing ERP for OCD, my schizoaffective disorder still continued to recover as well, thanks to DBT. I was doing all the skills, and I was suddenly able to handle what life was throwing at me. I wasn't engaging in bad behaviors as much, which honestly was a really big deal. At this point, I was actually doing it. I was actually recovering. I was coming back from losing everything. I started seeing that there was potentially a life on the other side of this that I might really love living. So I kept going to DBT and ERP and let my life change. All the while, I was working my tail off to build a support system. Because in my opinion, everyone with a severe mental illness needs one. I have a vast network of family and friends that I can call on when crap hits the fan. And I've carefully built this up over years. The big thing with it is that when I was recovering, I reached out to friends and family and told them my issues. Oftentimes, they said they would help if I needed it. So throughout my recovery, I took them up on it. And the thing is, I didn't just put it all on one person. I spread it out. That way, no one person gets burned out from dealing with me. And no one is overwhelmed or pressured. That really is the basics of how I built my support system that I wouldn't trade for the world. My biggest supporter, my number one fan, is my dad. He's helped me countless times and of course has been there from the very beginning. When I was in the psych ward, he drove hours every single day after work just to visit me every day except one day. And even though now I live on my own, and I'll get to that, he still lives a mile down the road just in case I need him. I also have friends I met in college and friends I met through cosplay. Both groups are massively helpful for getting me through things. And I have other friends that I've met through various things over the years, and I'm glad to have those friends in my corner as well. It's important to have people to talk to and be honest with. And I want to put an emphasis on honesty, both with yourself and others. I firmly believe that you shouldn't bottle anything up, ever. And you need to tell your therapist everything, period. And I mean everything. And speaking of therapists, I have one. The same therapist that helps me do ERP is also trained in DBT. So she's my main therapist now, and I see her pretty often. I also have a psychiatric nurse practitioner who manages my meds, and I see him multiple times a year. He was actually trained by my first psychiatrist, whom I have talked fondly of over the course of my whole channel, basically, but My new NP is someone I really like working with, and it was a pretty simple transition to get from my old psychiatrist to him. I trust him more too as a result, and I kind of need to trust the guy who gives me my meds. Both my therapist and my NP are vital for my literal survival, and it's because of all of these people that I'm able to live a productive, content life. And the results of my recovery to me are astounding. The first big step I tried once I got a lot of my life together was to try and get a job. In my mind, I knew disability was an option if I couldn't work. But I really, really wanted to try and make a full-time job work. So by now, many of you know I work in a lab. And that came from my biology degree that I got when I went through college, and the experience I got from working in multiple labs while I was in school. This job, I didn't know if it would work out, but I had to try. And now it's been 5 years. I got this job in March of 2020, right as the world shut down. And thus ensued 4 months of remote work with people I didn't know. And maybe that time where I worked from home gave me even more time to get my life together. Because by the time we all returned to the lab, and I, actually went to the lab for the first time, I was actually ready to try and show up to work to make work work. And I did. So with my job, I still lived with my dad and started saving money to create a nest egg so that I could try to move out. I'd been living with my dad ever since I came back from New York in February of 2019. And moving out was something that both of us wanted me to try and had faith that I could do. So in August of 2020, about a year and a half after my recovery started, I signed a lease for an apartment that was just down the road from where my dad lived. I live on my own in that apartment to this day with 3 guinea pigs and a lot of stuffed bees. And again, like I mentioned earlier in this video, my dad lives a mile down the road. And just so you know, my mom is 15 minutes away in case I need her, which is also nice. Years later, I'm just proud of myself that I was able to do those 2 things. Have a job and move out, and keep that job and stay moved out. And there's more. Without my mental illness ruining my life, I'm able to engage in really fun hobbies that make my life even more worth living. My favorite hobby is cosplay, and I get to travel up and down the East Coast with my friends, attending various comic and anime conventions. I attend anywhere from 4 to 7 cons a year, and it's absolutely one of the greatest joys of my entire life. I cannot express how much fun I have with cosplay. And I also travel the world, either solo or with my dad. And I knit, crochet, sew dresses, walk, play the piano. The list goes on and on and on. And I can't say I don't have bad days anymore. And I still have episodes. I mean, I have a whole playlist titled In Episodes. But the point is that I was able to develop skills and a plan for those bad days so that they don't ruin my life the way they used to. The point of this video is to say that even if you feel hopeless, and even in my case, trapped in a psych ward begging for help, recovery is possible. And it might not look like me. Not everyone can work a 9 to 5 and live alone, and that's okay. Some work part-time, some don't work at all, and some are self-employed. And some might not live alone either. They might live with their parents or siblings, have supportive roommates, or be in a communal home. And those situations are perfectly valid. There's so many ways to recover. And there is hope. There is so much hope. I felt like I was a lost cause, that I wasn't worth saving, and that I couldn't be saved. And now I'm here talking on the internet to thousands of people about how I made it. And the thing is, I believe that if you're stuck in the depths of mental illness, you can recover too. It's hard, I can tell you that, but it's worth it. It is so, so worth it. So don't give up and hang in there, because you're strong enough to handle what life throws at you. The last thing I'll say is that throughout my recovery, and even beyond the time frame I'm telling you about in this video, I did struggle with drinking more than I should. But I thought about it when I was planning out this video, and I kind of came to the conclusion that I wasn't ready to talk about that yet. And it was kind of a big thing throughout my recovery. Everything I mentioned in this video, it played a big role in my schizoaffective disorder recovery, and it played a role in my obsessive compulsive disorder recovery. But the more I thought about it and wrote down stuff about this video, the more I realized I couldn't talk about it yet. So everything in this video is still 100% true. It's 100%, it still happened. But that piece it's there. And one day I'll talk about it. You guys will hear about it one day, but not yet. And that's all for this video. And if you want to hear about my psychotic break, check out this video up here where I do a really deep dive on what happened. And if you don't want that one, check out this video down here that YouTube really seems to think you'd like if you want more content from me. But other than that, thanks so much for joining me and making the uncomfortable comfortable. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.